Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Satara Sata Shri Shriman The Divine Grace of Bhayacharanvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Satara Sata Shri Shriman The Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. So we'll read briefly from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, volume 6, chapter titled The Lame Man and the Blind Man. Continuing, this is the Srila Prabhupada's visit to New York City in 1976, July. And our Krishna consciousness movement is a propagation to teach people how to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is our mission. Because without relationship with God, without reviving our eternal affinity with God, we cannot be happy. All living entities, Prabhupada explained, are children of the Supreme Father, Krishna, or God. But only in the human form of life can one understand the relationship with God. If one misuses his life and doesn't understand his duty to Krishna, then his life is spoiled. So please do not take this Krishna conscious movement as any sectarian movement. It is a science of God. Try to understand the science of God. Either you accept it directly or you try to understand through philosophy and science. We have got so many books. Kindly take advantage of this movement. While we are distributing so many literatures, soberly and with calm head, try to understand this movement. This is our only mission. Thank you very much. As Srila Prabhupada left to return to the temple, prasadam distribution began and the dramatic actors prepared to go on stage with their rendition of Kali and his consort Sin. In the evening, the parade and festival received good coverage on all major TV stations. And the next morning, pictures and articles appeared in the newspapers. Prabhupada particularly liked the New York Daily News center spread, where several photos bore a large caption, Fifth Avenue, where East meets West. Send this cutting to many places, Prabhupada said. Send it to Indira Gandhi. This title is very nice. This is the point. East meets West. As I always say, the lame man meets the blind man. Together they do wonderful, and apart they cannot do anything. He is lame and he is blind. But if they join together, Indian culture and American money, it will save the whole world. Srila Prabhupada heard from the New York Times article, which stressed how the parade included hundreds of Indians who were pleased to see that they could keep faith even in New York City. The article quoted an Indian immigrant as saying, "We love New York City, America. It's the most beautiful place in the world. No other country will give such freedom for our own ceremony." That's a fact, Prabhupada said. That I always say. The Times first published about my activities when I was in Tompkins Square Park. At the festival site, prasadam had been served to 7,000 people. And even when the devotees had walked back uptown with the carts late at night, hundreds of people had followed and chanted. The devotees were already talking about how to improve the festival for next year. They could have a press box, and Prabhupada suggested they rent a small building downtown and call it Gundicha. Lord Jagannath could stay there for 1 week. Then the devotees should have another procession and festival with Lord Jagannath returning to the temple on 55th Street. Last night, said Tamal Krishna Goswami, all night we were cleaning up the grounds at the park. So one woman who lives next to the park said, "In all my years of living here, I've never seen such a wonderful festival held." And on CBS television, the official who's in charge of the park said, "We are very proud to be able to say that this park was founded hundreds of years ago when America was religious, and that spiritual life is still present in Washington Square Park." So why not ask the mayor to construct a temple there, said Srila Prabhupada. The devotees all laughed, but Prabhupada thought such things were certainly possible. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 1st Chapter, Text 14. Chapter titled Questions by Vidura. Iti uchivang tatra suyudanena. Did everybody have that verse? Is that the correct verse, Mr. Nattabara? 3:114? Et yuchivang tatra suyodanena pravridha kopaspurita darena pravridha kopaspurita darena asat kritak sat sprihaniya shila asat kritak sat sprihaniya shila sata sakarna nujaso balena sata sakarna nujaso balena. Please chant. Etyuchivang tatra suyodanena pravridda kopa spurita darena asat kritak sat spriyaniya shila Shata Sakarna Nujasho Balena Ityativam Tatra Suyodanena Pravidya Kopa Spurita Darena Asat Kritak Sat Spraharaya Shilaha Sata Sakarna Nujasho Balena. Ladies? Ityutivang Tatra Suyodanena Pravridya Kopa Spurita Darena Asat Kritak Sat Sprayaniya Shila Shata Sakarna Nujasho Balena Iti. Thus, Uchavan, while speaking, Tatra, there, Suyodanena, by Duryodhana, Pravrita, swollen with, Kopa, anger, Spurita, flapping, Adarena, lips, Asatkritak, insulted, Sat, respectable, Spriyaniya Shila, desirable qualities, Shata, Vidura, Sa, with, Karna, Anuja, younger brothers, Sobalena, with Sakuni. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. While speaking thus, Vidura, whose personal character was esteemed by respectable persons, was insulted by Duryodhana, who was swollen with anger and whose lips were trembling. Duryodhana was in company with Karna, his younger brothers, and his maternal uncle Shakuni. Please repeat. While speaking thus, Vidura, whose personal character was esteemed by respectable persons, was insulted by Duryodhana, who was swollen with anger and whose lips were trembling. Duryodhana was in company with Karna, his younger brothers, and his maternal uncle Shakuni. Purport. It is said that giving good counsel to a foolish person causes the fool to become angry, just as feeding milk to a snake only increases its venomous poison. Saint Vidura was so honorable that his character was looked up to by all respectable persons. But Duryodhana was so foolish that he dared to insult Vidura. This was due to his bad association with Shakuni, his maternal uncle, as well as with his friend Karna, who always encouraged Duryodhana in his nefarious acts. Om Jnana Tamrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Latevina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bangum Lankayate Garam Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatanam. I like the translation of flapping. You can just see Duryodhana with his flapping lips. Flapping lips. If you ever see, if you look in the front of the photos, the pictures included, you see Vidura putting his bow by the door and Duryodhana in the back just with his lips flapping. So that's a very interesting, picturesque scenario. This impotent person chastising a realized soul, insulting, so insulting. I mean, we know you've seen the content, but basically, and we should remember that committing such offenses against these elevated individuals never ends well. I mean, Dhritarashtra lost his 100 sons because of his listening to his foolish son, his, foolish brother-in-law. Nothing good came out of this situation, obviously. Well, yeah, Bhagavad Gita came out of this situation. But besides that, for their side, for the Kauravas, nothing good came above. So this, and Vidura, as we read previously, Prabhupada mentioned in the purport that he didn't really have to leave, but, such circumstances are arranged solely for the benefit, so that we can hear the conversation between himself and the great sage Maitreya, which is filled with the questions that all realized, intelligent living entities should aspire to hear and take shelter of. We don't want to be the foolish persons described here that become angry or venomous upon hearing good counsel. And we've seen this. If you try to give advice to someone who is not willing to hear it, it just gives rise to their, inimical attitude. And therefore, the preachers in the Krishna conscious movement have to be a little bit aware of the situation when their daily exchanges with the general public. We don't want to put them in a situation where for some reason they're angry at us, which would cause them to commit offenses or to, not get the benefit of this very rare and unique experience. And, there's in all of New York City, how many devotees are there distributing Srila Prabhupada's books? So for a person to come in contact with such a person, such a messenger of the Supreme Lord, is a very rare thing. And so we don't want to spoil that opportunity for that person. So we have to become empowered representatives in everything we say and do. It should always be on our forefront of our consciousness that how am I representing the spiritual master, favorably or unfavorably? In all of our activities, not just when we're out in the street, but that should be very prominent, that we're representatives. And you see how happy Srila Prabhupada was when he saw the favorable coverage of the devotees. And this just recent Ratha Yatra, we received the same thing. Devotees were coming and saying that the people were coming out of their buildings adjacent to the park and saying how wonderful it was. That, the devotees are here because there's nothing but nescience all night long. They have these illegal raves, and it's driving the inhabitants to great distraction. And they don't know what to do. And the government, the only purpose of government is to protect the citizenry. And they feel completely abandoned. Of course, this is Kali Yuga. We understand that what's happening. And so it's a very good opportunity for us to demonstrate what the alternative is. As Prabhupada said, the sterling culture of, Bharat, passed down through these timeless books, the Srimad Bhagavatam, where we can see the way men and women are meant to act and behave, and juxtapose that with what we see today. So anybody could see that. Like I said, the inhabitants around Washington Square Park were coming out and saying how wonderful it was. The officials were saying how nice it was, how the park is always left so much cleaner when the devotees, because after a typical night there, the park is totally trashed. It's totally trashed. All the detritus of the sinful activities, the empty liquor bottles, the syringes, just the most abominable things that you can imagine. All the leftovers of the sinful activities. So it's easy for them to see, and we want to maintain that in their minds, the difference between the devotees, so that they are more inclined to take a book. So this is our whole endeavor here, that if they get a favorable impression, either by coming to the temple or seeing us on the street, then when they see another devotee distributing books, they're more eager, more favorable to receive it. So we're trying to create a favorable atmosphere in the temple and outside the temple. And it's not difficult for us. We're just simply what Srila Prabhupada has given us. If we maintain that in everything we say and do, then there'll be no problem. If we try to make things up, then you're, unless someone is on the transcendental platform, any adjustment would simply be a distraction, to say the least, if not worse. So this is, we can't speculate, what's favorable and unfavorable. We have to just hear it from the lips of the spiritual master. Many times he would have to correct the devotees. They would ask questions. Can we do this? Can we do that? And Prabhupada was he sees things, obviously, directly in line with, the parampara, and his deep transcendental realizations, not like our superficial emerging of some philosophical concept that somehow rings true to us, but which has nothing to do with spiritual reality. It just sounds nice, just like so many other pseudo-spiritual literatures. People are always fond of quoting this person or that person, but they really have nothing to do with transcendental reality. They're totally detached, just based on sentiment or emotion. But many people cannot see that. So therefore, it is up to us, the few members of the Krishna conscious movement, to demonstrate in everything we do and say, as I probably often quoted, at least become a gentleman. This was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's concern. That if we're so elevating so-called devotees from every walk of life, which means that, there are people coming from, castes and creeds that are not accepted in the Vedic varna and ashram, then we have to at least exemplify the faith that our spiritual master has placed in us, and at least become gentlemen in everything we say and do. Otherwise, what is the point? If someone says, well, you devotees are supposed to be so whatever, holy, realized, etc. And if we don't act properly, then they have a right to criticize. So this is something that we should always be aware of. Just like when you put on the policeman, every day he goes out, he puts on the uniform, he knows that he's under additional scrutiny. Everybody's going to judge him to a higher standard. And it's the same thing with us. They're going to judge us to a higher standard. We're held to a higher standard, and rightly so. So we should always be cautious not to become like flapping lips, Duryodhana or Dhritarashtra, either one. The father and the son were both equally blind. One was physically blind and one was spiritually blind. So what more can we say about such a situation? Look at these people that they're associating with, right? Birds of a feather flock together. Shakuni was such a rascal in every respect, cheating, in order to trick the Pandavas into the loss of their kingdom. what to speak of the loss of their kingdom, the loss of their wife, you know. And this is also an example to us, even if one as elevated as Yudhisthira has a gambling obsession. Just think about the living entities who have no such birth or heritage. You know, and you read about, I don't know about in New York City, they don't have really a lot of billboards except in Times Square. But when you're driving the highways and byways, you know, throughout the country, you'll always see, you know, 1-800 gambling addiction. You know, people are completely addicted. They put up these casinos and people lose their hard-earned wealth in a flash. You know, this is, and you know, this is, why do we say no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling? Because it leads to ruination. And it's not just that it leads to financial ruination. Gambling is the great cause of untruth. You see, it's a vehicle for cheating. And here's the epitome of cheating, a shakuni, the loaded dice. Everyone knows what loaded dice are? You know what loaded dice are? Yes. They make a little arrangement, they weight the dice so that it always rolls whatever they want it to roll.
The secret of these dice also, they're the bones of Shakuni's brothers, and they're mystically influenced.
Mystic, see?
So he could just mystically make them whatever he wanted. It's even more cheating than that.
Even more so. Who can imagine? So yes, so many arrangements for cheating are there. So much intelligence is used. You see these scam artists, very smart. They're using that, this is that durbuddhi. You know, they're using their intelligence, but they're using it in a negative, nefarious way. And the whole world is like that. You'll see, people are scheming and plotting and conspiring. This takes great intelligence. But it's all for, you know, some personal self-aggrandizement. It only leads to ruination ultimately. Shakuni is thinking he's so smart, but you know, ultimately he had to pay the ultimate price. You know, so these things are there. No one escapes the law of karma. Right? In the material world they say two things are certain, death and taxes. Right? But more above that is karma. You know, and which is the source of all material misery. But you know, the general mass of people are not familiar with that, so therefore we distribute Srila Prabhupada's book so that they can gain a better understanding, to help them guide their life in a pious way at least. You know, and more due to influence by this movement, people are understanding that things like meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling are sinful. They're not meant for the upliftment of human society. They're only meant to bring degradation to the general populace. And so we should be very strong. We shouldn't waver when someone says, "Why is it bad? Why can't I eat meat?" We should know. We should be able to explain to them, you know, that the cause of suffering, such violence, as Prabhupada reminds us, is the cause of all wars. You know, people are proclaiming we want peace. But how can you have peace if you're committing violence on such a massive scale? There has to be a reaction. Right? Sometimes the example is used of a balloon. When you squeeze a balloon on one side, it expands on the other side. So this is similar. There has to be a reaction. It cannot continue without a reaction. And so right now this is called the particular time period. You know, if you examine these things in history, there are patterns. Every 80 years, there's a major upheaval. Every 80 years you have from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War to the First World War to various things. So this continues on like this. So it's just a matter of time. It's inevitable. It's not that, people think that, oh, if we do this, if we do that. No, human nature is such. They haven't ceased, hostilities against the animal kingdom. There's been no truce, no treaty. So it's just a matter of time. So the devotees should not think that, we'll be unaffected. No. Prabhupada said it will be a very good time for us to preach, just like we had a little taste for the pandemic, so-called pandemic, right? Some people become favorable. They become receptive. Their priorities become adjusted. And so that they realize that for us, maybe time is better spent in spiritual pursuit. Let me learn how to meditate. Let me learn how to mitigate this suffering. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the statistics, the increased suicide during this most recent situation. There was some person, I forget, some mildly popular situation, when they were told that they had COVID, they committed suicide. Such a hopeless situation. You're told you have COVID and it's not cancer, it's not terminal, it's not this, but they just committed suicide. So, we're hopefully a little stronger spiritually, mentally, intellectually. We know how to see these things in their proper perspective. That was the definition of intelligence Prabhupada gave in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter. He said intelligence means to understand things in their proper perspective. There'll always be a perspective. There won't always be intelligence. But for someone who has intelligence and who can see patterns and has perspective, then there's no surprises, there's no real surprises. Even the karmis say that. What do they say? Why am I not surprised? Right? They say this all the time. Why am I not surprised? Because you can see it coming. So we should take advantage of that. People make millions of dollars by looking at patterns in stock markets, in financial trading, and all these different things. And those are the ones that make money. They see patterns. So we should see the pattern is that, what's favorable for devotional service, what's unfavorable for devotional service. Niyamagraha. And under all circumstances, we should maintain our cheerful demeanor. Right? Utsaha nishtaya daya tat tat karma pravartanat. We have nothing to worry about. But, still, some people just can't help but worrying. So if you have to worry, you should worry that, how can I become a better devotee? How can I please the spiritual master? How can I please the Supreme Personality of Godhead? You can dovetail that worry. How can I be a better devotee? What can I do? If you want to worry. Otherwise, don't worry. No loss or diminution, a little advancement saves one from the greatest fear. Means no worries. Right? And even in Hindi, when we're doing work there to serve the spiritual master, they have a very common saying. What do they say? Chinta mat karo, khush raho. Right? Even Walt Disney adapted that. Chinta mat karo means don't worry. Khush raho, be happy. Right? So it went all the way from India to Jamaica to the Lion King, everything. Everything is there. Chinta mat karo. The workers will tell you, because you're worried about the deadlines, the materials, this and that, and they would come up to you and say, Prabhu, chinta mat karo. Why are you worrying? Don't worry. Khush raho. Khush means smile. Keep smiling. But translates literally as be happy. So there's, for us, no loss or diminution. We're perfectly situated. Sometimes there may not be enough prasadam, sometimes it may be this, sometimes it may be that. There's no excuse to not be, to feel yourself not properly situated. You know, Maya will look for any window of opportunity. Don't give her that window. Keep the window shut. Keep it shut and locked tight. All right? Just like we want to keep out the elements. We don't want the rain to come in. We don't want the snow to come in. Shut the window. It's as simple as that. You know, the mind has so many openings. And you have to just go around, just like at night when you go around to your apartment, you close all the windows. Just close them. And then nothing can get in. You know, you chant your 16 rounds, you follow the principles, you hear Srimad Bhagavatam, it's closing all the windows. You know, the mind is free from disturbance. But as soon as you open that one window, whatever it is, hunger, thirst, lamentation, hankering, you know, boom. Immediately that breeze of Maya comes in. Yeah. So we're all, and we're all situated in the same boat, you know. There's that. And on that boat there are so many different facilities. And we just have to find that facility which suits us best. You know, the spiritual master is still the captain. The Vedas are still the favorable breezes. ISKCON is still the boat. You know, everything is there. So just find your place, you know. And gradually you will, according to your desire, you will be in a situation that suits you perfectly. You know, some people are looking for a first-class cabin. Some people don't mind if I'm in a cabin with no window. You know, that doesn't. But whatever it is, just find it and, you know, be happy with it. The idea of being satisfied with what you have is one of the core tenets of Krishna consciousness. You be satisfied with what you have. Whatever Krishna gives you. If Krishna doesn't give, then what should I do? I should lament. Brahma bhuta prasanatma nasochiti nakangshiti. This is exactly, this is the peace formula. That don't lament, don't hanker. Krishna can supply whatever you need. But you have to put yourself in that situation where he sees you by your actions. Right? Prabhupada said, don't try to see Krishna. Just work in such a way that he sees you. So class is a little short. We'll be going back to our normal schedule on Monday. Our previous schedule. We can call it normal or not. Which means that class will be again at 8 o'clock. Greeting of the Ds will be at 7:30. And then breakfast will be again at 9 o'clock. So any questions, comments, corrections? Dr. Nate, any? No? We're all good? Nata Bhargaranga Peru? Did you have a question? Who's?
Real quick, different angle when foolish people try to get into an argument with you, it's not worth your time to...
Absolutely not worth your time. Give them prasadam or give them a book. That's the 2-minute signal. That means the Devas will come in. So we don't want to... Let's set the camera up. Any other questions, Natavar?